Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Foley is POD. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer himself, the hardcore legend, Mr. Mick Foley. Mick, how are you, man?
Great, Conrad. Great to be here for week 3 on Foley is POD.
I'm excited for it, man. We've got 2 in the rearview mirror, and today's topic is the story of how you lost your ear in Germany. I guess we should just start at the very beginning for a minute. I mean, when you're first training with Dominic DeNucci, maybe wrestling fans have seen what training camp's supposed to be like with Tough Enough, but that's a reality show. But I still can't imagine there was a day where Dominic said, okay, here's where we're going to do the hangman spot, kids. So how does that come about?
There was never such a day. Dominic was a real big believer on the basics and the fundamentals, and he spoke in parable-like ways. So he would say, for example, you can't make a complete sentence until you learn the words. You can't make a paragraph until you learn your sentences. And he wanted us to have the basic words and the basic sentences down before we went out and started constructing wild paragraphs. I think it was maybe a year into training where I decided I wanted to do something. It seemed crazy at the time. It was the backdrop over the top rope, a la Randy Savage. Mm-hmm. Savage was a big influence on all of us. And I think that can be evidenced by the fact that for a little while in 1990/91, when I was trying to figure out how to take this middle of the card Cactus Jack character and make him more threatening, more of a main event type guy, I sounded a little too much like Randy Savage. Did not think for a moment that I sounded that way when I was doing it. Wasn't until Eddie Gilbert called me out on it on a radio show, and then when I listened back to the stuff I did in Global, which was just a couple weeks before my WCW started, like, wow, I am taking on too many countenances of Randy Savage.
Give me an example.
Let me tell you something, Joe Pedicino. So there's it's Cactus Jack, but it's both of the voices come from inside the chat. They come from way down deep. I don't know if I actually said, let me tell you something. So, and instead of ooh, yeah, it might be, man, you're calling me. I don't have evidence right now.
But it got all over you at the time. Like, dang, maybe it was ripping a little too much.
But Eddie caught me off guard because I didn't know that was the case. But a lot of the stuff was bottled, the way Savage, it was like he wasn't taking a breath. So Eddie Gilbert, when I get you, it's the Philadelphia Civic Center. It was a lot of tension in here and here without any breathing and in a deeper voice. And then it was a short segue from there to doing the stuff that would later be Cactus Jack that not many people would confuse with Randy's. But I'd say for the first 4 or 5 months I was with WCW, there was a little bit of an overlap. And hopefully Randy takes that as the Savage family takes that as a compliment. Because I understand, Lanny told me that Randy was inspired by Firpo, the Wild Man.
Yeah, Pampero Firpo. Yeah, that's what I was looking at. Because I thought the and all that was really borrowed from him.
Yeah, that was borrowed. We all borrow from each other. In this case, Randy would take that really beautiful backdrop over the top rope where he's landing on his feet and crumbling, like it would be like something similar to what a paratrooper would do. But there's still a lot of risk on your knees and your ankles. And so we taped the heck out of my ankles, and it was a big build-up for me to do that move, and it didn't look nearly as good as Savage's. And later on, I would go on to just realizing that if stuff looked good in the ring and there was some question as to its authenticity, then if it looked good in the ring, it's going to look better outside on the floor.
Yeah.
And it was a big step, but it was a fairly easy step if you were willing to take the pain that came along with it. But as far as the hangman, I had taken note of it the first time in a magazine where Exotic Adrian Street had Randy Savage. It was Randy who had done the hangman, right? And I never saw Randy do the hangman a single time in WWE or WWF. But it was a photo of the hangman. Then it was the movie I Like to Hurt People. Awful movie, but still some good stuff in it, you know. And I did steal a line from Terry Funk on the day that I met my wife, which was when I confronted a race car driver who took exception with me saying that what they did wasn't real or wasn't a sport. I took Terry Funk's speech that said, primitive man did one of only three things. They swam for their life, they ran for their life, or they do what I do and fought for their lives. They did not get in a car and drive away, and thus unfolded the angle I met my wife at. So I'd seen it in that. I'd seen it in that movie. I'd seen it in the.
Who did it in the movie? Do you recall?
I can't remember. They had a great array of wrestlers taking great bumps for the movie, and Funk was in it, and Exotic Adrian Street. There's a lot of wrestlers in it. Good idea, mockumentary, but it was telling a story about a guy who had been decapitated using the hangman. So of course that intrigued me, and then I saw Don Morocco do it as a really creative way of a count out. So he was counted out outside the ring, and so back then with the VCR you could pause and you could frame by frame it. And I would say, okay, here we go. So you have to make it look like it's part of your natural motion. You have to, in flying motion, get your head in between second and third, use your body's momentum and that bottom arm to twist the second rope over the top rope, and now you're hanging. So I will produce a photo for you of a young Shane Douglas looking down on Cactus Jack, who'd been caught up at an indie show. So I was doing this as far back as '86 because it was one of those things I could do. It required timing and momentum, not pure athletic skill. And also there was a very definite price to be paid. Even in the days before the ropes were too tight, you know, but they were always going to be tight because you're twisting the second rope over the top rope. And so there's only a limited amount of tension. So, you know, the idea is once you're in, you have to then try to pull just as much as you can just to squeeze out. But even when you squeeze out, there's an enormous amount of pressure on those ears. And prior to Germany, I had been stitched up on late night hospital visits about 4 times for that for that same move, and I'd probably been patched up another 5 or 6 times backstage, or in one case, Gary Michael Capetta, the ring announcer, mentions that his mom had on a couple of occasions tended to my wounds. Because Gary was the ring announcer. He was an employee. He didn't have to pay for his hotel rooms or his cars. And I liked riding with him. It wasn't like I was suffering. He was a good, fun guy to ride with. And he was like at the Courtyard by Marriott, which is not where I was when I was making those choices. I would later catch on and become a mainstay with the Midnight Express in Corning, and in the Ford Taurus, and then I would have to pay for my hotels because those guys like to be on their own.
Sure.
And besides, it was always interesting to hold a drinking cup up to Stan Lane's room and hear what might be. When a guy shows up with 26 bottles of baby oil, that's a good night for you to do some investigative reporting. So, you know what? I hate to say this is borderline. This is risque for Foley, but I was thinking, I got the Folgers going on here, and they've got that great jingle. You know, the best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup, and I'm thinking, I'm guessing that guy never had an adventurous girlfriend or wife.
No, he did not. He did not at all.
As good as his coffee is, I don't think I'm ready to put it on that other level.
No, I can think of a few things that might be better. So I'm curious, the first time you try this spot, I mean, you're not actually doing it on a show. This is a practice thing.
The first time I tried the hangman was on a show.
In front of fans?
Yeah, in front of fans. So it was, you know, what's funny is I remember Shane and I, when we were part of UWF, Bill Watts' UWF, was expanding into new areas. They were attempting to run shows in new areas because the they were real dependent on the mid-southern oil towns. And when there was a downturn in the economy, you could see that reflected on the attendance. But Watts had this great syndicated package, and they started venturing to other cities or towns where their TV was strong. So Shane and I, we worked 100 West Virginia. That's where I met Missy Hyatt, who walked in on me while I was naked. And didn't walk in on me. It was just one of those bathrooms where there's no stalls, right? And she happens to walk in, and the hardcore legend was in the pooping process. So that was the first. That was the first meeting. And so Shane and I were tearing it down by the standards of the day as independents. You know, we'd be the opening match, and we were doing everything we could, and we could do quite a few things, especially by the standards of the time. And I think that's the first night we threw in the hangman in front of Eddie and Missy and Buddy Jack Roberts. But I'd probably done it a time or two before that. So a couple days later, Shane and I are walking from our motel. I won't even call it a hotel because it was almost decidedly a motel. And Missy and Eddie, who were married at that time, drive by, and they can tell that Shane and I are talking over a high spot. And Eddie could tell what high spot it was just by the verbal language. Because Shane would kip up and he would give me an enzuguri. And that's what would send me through the ropes.
I see.
And so they were able to deduce that just by our body language. So here we are. We think we're protecting the business. We're actually walking in public, going over high spots that Eddie Gilbert can call based on our body language.
That's
hilarious. So
hilarious.
I was using that bad boy as far back as '86. And with the knowledge that there was a price to pay for it, no one else dared do it. I think there's some great footage that I have managed to hold on to of Bray Wyatt asking me to show him that move in 2013.
Wow.
While I am in full Santa Claus regalia. So I said, hey, I sent it to him, and I said, someday when they do the Bray Wyatt DVD, you're going to want this footage. So
yeah.
I'll try to dig it up for you. That'd be cool to find.
Hilarious. Right? The idea that Santa Claus is telling him how to do the
Santa Claus is
hangman.
showing him how to do it. But now there's a definite. Now I look at those ropes. I was like, first of all, I don't think I can pull myself out. And on the night we're going to discuss in Germany, I did pull myself out, but it wasn't an altogether successful excavation project. But it was a difficult move, and there would be and I'd have these big splits in the back of my ear on 4 or 5 occasions. I'd had it enough, Conrad, to know that the back of your ear is mostly cartilage. It doesn't bleed. But it hurts, and it's crazy. It's laid wide open, no blood, drop or two of blood. And then when we fast forward and talk in depth about the night in Germany, there was a lot of blood, which is why I realized this was above and beyond any ear injury I'd had doing this move. When
you're getting those ear injuries, not that night in Germany, but before, did it ever cross your mind that, hey, this is a possibility? This thing could come off?
No, it hadn't. Because I thought the only way the ear would come off if it was cauliflowered. And some ears will do it, and some ears will not. And by virtue of the fact that I'd been through this thing, I guess on like 10, 12 different occasions, to where even if you didn't have the split, and if you did, you'd still go through this process where the ear would turn all these colors. Go from a dark black and purple to a greenish hue, and then it's tailing off on yellow. And all that time, it's incredibly sensitive and incredibly painful. In Japan, the reason all the workers walk around with the cauliflower ears is because it's encouraged and influenced.
It's a badge of honor.
It's a badge of honor, and everyone wants it. And it's almost like there's something missing if you don't have it. So they do the what you're supposed to do if you think you have it is put ice on it, attend to it, drain it, whatever you have to do. Then in Japan, they whack you in the ear and they break those blood vessels, and then instead of handing you an ice pack, they hand you a heating pad.
Oh.
Yeah, and the guys want it. It's not something that's uncalled for. It's called for and everyone wants it. But in my history, I just never got cauliflower ear. Even I amateur wrestled, for my senior year, had this injury 12, 13 times. It just never happened. So it never dawned on me that it could get worse. I thought, this is a price I'm willing to pay. I have a split in my ear. It hurts like crazy.
Was it always the same one?
It was always the same one. It was always
never the inside ear, always the outside.
Right. Yeah, it was always the outside ear. And oddly, when I did the King of the Deathmatch tournament in Japan, I nearly lost the left ear in the barbed wire. So that would have left me in a very unique situation, being a man with no ears.
I'm curious. Is there? It doesn't sound like it, but is there a best practice to doing the spot? You want to be in the center of the ring, I would assume.
Yeah. I don't know what's something people should be practicing in looser ropes.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask, because in my head it feels like, and again, I know you would never do this, but I'm thinking, man, if I know I got to do that spot, we're going to have to turn that turnbuckle a few times and loosen those ropes a little more.
Loosen it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And on the night in Germany, they were extra tight. I tried arguing that was WCW's doing in hiring a ring crew that was actually a rock and roll road crew instead of a specialized ring crew. Those ropes were tighter. And it's such a specialty move. If you use it too often, it becomes it loses some of its meaning.
Well, you might tip your hand too if the audience sees
somebody out there loosening it up.
Yeah.
I thought when I got to WWE that the move would be easier
because of the rope difference.
The ropes. It wasn't that much easier. I did it maybe 6-7 times in WWE, and it was always difficult to get out. There's this moment in Mind Games. This is one of the top 5-10 seconds of my career. Is that Shawn Michaels and I have a lot going on, and it culminates with me taking the bump and hanging my head in the ropes. Shawn comes over, bam, I hit him with the mandible claw. And what he does is he's selling while simultaneously trying to help me get out of there, which is pretty cool. Instead of somebody coming in absolutely looking like they're trying to help their opponent out of a bad situation, Shawn did it while he was selling. And I think Earl Hebner may have been in on that, trying to get out of there. There was one other situation I did it in a major match in WWE where it was Mankind versus The Undertaker, April 1997. So I'm the first.
Revenge of the Taker.
Yeah, Revenge of the Taker. And as you and I talked about last week, when I came in as Mankind, the internet was maybe in its infancy at that time. Of course, anyone who read the sheets knew that I was Cactus Jack, and anyone who had watched WCW knew. But I'd say 75% of the audience did not know. This is about a week before I give, or maybe I've already given the interview with Jim Ross. That would turn the tide on that whole, the Foley character and introduce the world to Dude Love. But at the time, nobody knew what I looked like. Maybe I was thinking that because this interview was out there, people were going to find out, so I might as well expose it anyway. And so I was going to do the hangman, and in getting out, the mask was going to stay.
Oh, that's cool.
Pretty cool visual. And because I was, at the time, no longer, not a believer in special effects, really believed that if something was done to alter my look, it had to be that old school way, which Robert Fuller introduced to me as boogering the eye with a towel, rubbing off some of the skin. And I thought, a towel is good. Sandpaper would be better.
Oh.
And so this was one of maybe 3 times that I had molded some pretty good-looking bruises with a piece of sandpaper. And in this case, since the world is going to see me and I want to look hideous, now all I would have had to do is go to Jerry Lawler, who could have made me up to look hideous in 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
A Richie Posner, I'm sure, could have done something similar, but Lawler, he specialized in those bruises. And instead, I more or less rubbed off a good portion of the right side of my face, but never told Kevin Dunn that we were looking to expose the hideous nature of mankind underneath that mask. So we hit that thing perfectly. I squeeze out, off comes the mask, and they never showed a single solitary moment of mankind without his mask. Because
not wanting to spoil it.
They thought it had been a mistake.
Yeah.
So, and so I walked around with a hideous bruise on my face, which turns into a scab after about 3 or 4 days.
Gross.
But that was what I was looking to do.
Did you know it didn't air, or when did you find out it didn't?
Well, it was only when I watched it back, and I was like, "But what?" Yeah, and it's again that's all I had to do was go and say, "Listen, this is what I want to do." They would have passed it by Vince, and if Vince didn't want people to see him without the mask, he could ixnate it.
So that was a teachable moment for you.
Definitely a teachable moment. Yeah. I had a lot in my mind. You know, we did the big bump through the head first bump through the table that had never been done before or since. You know, which was an
unbelievable visual.
A cool visual with my feet sticking up through that big hole, right? But going back to the hangman, there was always a price to pay.
Welcome back. This segment of Foley is Pod is presented by ZYN nicotine pouches, the simpler way to experience nicotine satisfaction and enjoy lasting change on your terms. ZYN nicotine pouches are a fresher, simpler way to enjoy nicotine that's helped millions of people achieve lasting change by offering smoke-free and spit-free satisfaction. I don't know about you, but there have been times in my life where I needed to make a change. Like when I turned 40, I knew I needed to make a change, but I just wasn't ready yet. I'm sure a lot of smokers and dippers out there can relate, and ZYN understands there isn't just one right time to make a change. Everyone's timeline is a little different. Everyone's on their own journey.
So whenever you feel like you're ready to take that first step toward change, ZYN will be there for you with the right strength, the right flavor, at the right time.
If you're thinking about making a change and want to learn more today, check out ZYN nicotine patches at zyn.com. That's ZYN.com. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. So you talked a little bit about the difference between the ropes, and we fans have heard over the years that the WWF used real, actual ropes that were maybe wrapped in tape or painted or what have you, and then WCW, it was a cable with almost like a garden hose around it.
Kind of, a rubber coating over what we thought were elevator cables. And that's pretty much standard for
most rings are that way,
except for WWE. Using the ropes. Some promotions may buy an old boxing ring. So here and there across the country or the world, there might be wrestling rings with ropes. But by and large, the WWE is the promotion that uses ropes.
Did you have a preference, cables or ropes?
Once I got used to the ropes, I liked the ropes. I just saw within the past few days, X-Pac stating a preference for the 18-foot rings with the cables, because he thought it kept the action going. So,
as opposed to a 20-foot.
Yeah, I think that the 20-footer, I think it looks better on TV, and it makes WWE stand out as the one company with the 20-foot ring. But it feels like you're running through the Sahara Desert the first time you're in there. Those extra 2 feet might as well be 2 extra miles. It seems like you will never get there, and you adjust your steps. Guys are so used to doing things a certain way.
Instead of 3 steps, it's 4 or 5.
Yeah. But the ropes, I'd say, given my choice, I'd rather do the hangman and the ropes, but it's still tight.
Did any these days we hear a lot of wrestlers talk to the younger generation and say, oh, you don't want to do this and you don't want to do that. Did anybody come to you in that era and say, I don't know about that hangman spot cactus?
No, I'd say unlike the stuff that I did, the elbow and the backdrops on the floor where I'd be warned and reprimanded, I think, I'm just thinking off the top of my head by basis of Robert Foley, good old school spot, Jacko, that they liked the idea that somebody was doing one of their spots. On the my A&E biography, Rick mentioned that Dory Funk Jr. used to do that with his foot. Adrian Adonis used to he used to get knocked out, take a clothesline backwards with both his arms in there, and get both arms done. But I've been with
like Andre.
Yeah, like Andre. Well, but differently. And Andre would get him tied up like this.
Yes.
Adrian would take the clothesline over the top rope.
Oh, I see.
And come up. And I remember years and years ago being with some good pros and all trying to figure out how Adrian did it. And we couldn't get it. We couldn't get it. So mine is, you know, I say it's simple in that this is what you do, second rope over the top rope. But it's a matter of timing. It's a matter of being willing to hang in there long enough to make the move meaningful. And then you have to sell it. I will come out of my easy chair and drive down to whatever arena someone is performing at if I see someone no-selling the hangman, because it's believable, right?
Sure.
It should be believable. There's a lot. I've got a believable injury to show for it, and you just want to make sure people treat that respectfully.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a. I didn't use it so much that it wasn't a surprise, but it was there for me on a special occasion, which I thought that night in Germany was.
So you had done this move for years at that point, including, it sounds like, Continental, because you mentioned the Fullers.
Yeah.
Did you do it in World Class?
I did it in World Class because Chris Adams had seen me do it when Watts was running those shows. So Chris loved the move. I did it in Continental. I did it in World Class. I'm not sure if I did it in my first run with WCW, but I used it many times, especially at house shows.
Yeah.
At house shows, it was a great house show pop. And looking back on it, it's like, well, should I have been, a great house show pop versus a 4-hour emergency room stay? Like, and looking back on it, probably not a good move. But, when I was working with guys like Steamboat, who had worked with the best in the world, like, I wanted something that I could do, especially given that I didn't have the gas tank that some of the guys that he worked with had. Notably, I'm thinking of Rick.
Sure.
And I didn't want to disappoint Ricky. Ricky, when I was working with him, had injured ribs too that we were working around. And so I was trying to have good matches that would, live up to Steamboat's standards, and that
make an impression.
Yeah, that was one of the moves that I would throw in.
So you mentioned a 4-hour emergency room visit. Was that protocol? If you felt one of those splits in your ear, you're going to the ER.
If it was bad enough. Or it might just depend on who.
What could they do at that point? I'm not saying that to be silly, but what is there to do at that point?
They stitch it up.
I see.
Yeah, so it was usually, I'd say, in the 12 to 16 stitches range.
Oh my!
So I think you could say, well, look, I probably should have taken that item off the menu.
So you slept on your left side that night?
Yeah. But the difference between going to the emergency room and not going to the emergency room might not be based on the wound itself, but might be based on whether or not you were taken off for the next town that night. If you were riding with someone. So ice and peroxide, whatever you could find, new skin burned, rubbing alcohol burned, peroxide bubbled up, and then sometimes I would tend to it myself. Sometimes Gary Michael Capetta's mom would tend to it. Sometimes a nurse backstage would do a little something, and sometimes it was bad enough I'd go to the ER.
So let's talk about how we got here. The event is March 16th, 1994. You're in Germany to take on Vader. But let's talk about just those WCW European tours.
Yeah.
This is a time where here domestically, frankly, the house show business is not what we would call strong. Mm-hmm. But it seems like when you go overseas, you're going to have a much bigger house. But boy, it was a different way of life compared to quote-unquote making towns here in America, was it not?
Yeah. I never really liked... I liked the freedom of being in a rental car. Mm-hmm. That's part of what I loved about wrestling. I loved making the towns, for the most part. And in WCW, my first year there, until Abdullah and company parted ways, I was with Abdullah. They waived the 3-wrestler limit. You had to have a minimum of 3. For me and Abby, they let us go 2, and they let me rent a caddy. So I haven't rented a caddy since '91 because it's not in the budget. But so I enjoyed riding with Abby. I enjoyed making those towns. I didn't enjoy being with the group all the time, 24/7. That's too much. I love the boys and the women, but I'm kind of a loner. I like my hotel room. I like my long drives. So it was different, and also we were doing some shows in the old Eastern Germany, which was run down. It was dirtier. It wasn't real cheerful, when you're doing.
You weren't in a tourist town,
right? We weren't in a tourist town. We did the tour of Dresden, because of its, it's a famous city in the course of human events. But coming back to Munich is a Western town. It still had this feeling of dreariness to it. The whole tour did. I think it had that feeling of dreariness for me because I had worked so diligently on my German, made it clear to the powers that be that I could cut promos in German and do interviews in German. And this is where you read the writing on the wall. When one by one the WCW stars are being brought onto TV shows and whatnot, and here's the guy who worked on the German, speaks the German, cuts by, and you're not using him. I thought it was an intentional. This is where I'm gonna risk sounding bitter, but if I'm going to be honest, I was bitter about it. I felt I was bitter enough about it, and felt slighted enough that I gave my notice after this incident. This is where I really read the writing on the wall, and thought, man. This is wrestling. This is the one line of business where losing an ear is not only not a bad thing, but it could be a great thing. It doesn't matter that Leon did not actively help me get out or that he did not actively put me in there. I was in a match with Vader where my ear was ripped off my head, and that seems like as close to a license to print money in WCW as we had. It didn't matter that we worked 6 months earlier on this is new, coming out of the gates hot. And when I saw none of that happening in the build-up, and none of that in the aftermath, and then given the conversation I had with Rick on the night of the show, which was that they were going to turn me back heel.
So the night of the event,
yeah,
you met with Rick, I assume, before.
Yeah, before.
And does this happen in the arena?
It's in the arena, yeah. And
so he comes over and says, "Hey, Cactus, I want to talk to you."
Yeah,
sort of deal?
We had a long talk, and it was based almost exclusively around. And this is what I took from it. Rick might have another. He might say, "No, this here was the basis of the conversation." What I took from it almost exclusively was that the beatings I had taken at the hands of Vader, Rick said they're the most brutal beatings he'd seen, didn't result in a jump in the ratings. This is a time when they're judging the ratings not by 15-minute increments, but by 2-hour ratings. And you and I discussed before that we shouldn't be so beholden to the ratings, that they might tell a different tale, and you can't tell what percentage of those people are into it on a 2 on a scale of 1 to 10 or into it on a 10.
Yes.
And if you're losing some of the 1s and 2s, but you're gaining more of the 8s and 9s and 10s who are heavily into it, it's something that I could see and feel when I was out there. Like, I felt like I was one of the top guys in the company, and I felt like the babyface run had worked, and that I could work with just about anybody in the company and have a good match. At the time, they were now teaming me up with Max Payne, and I liked Max, but I also understood it was a little bit of a step down from those main event programs, which I was okay with because I'd watched a lot of wrestling, especially basing it on the old WWF I used to watch. And you realize that guys would take a step down and be in a program, and then all they need is the right angle to boost them back up.
Right.
So I wasn't as concerned about the push until Germany, until it was kind of the trifecta. One is Now, as I'm saying trifecta, there might only be two. But one was the complete lack of use of my, the skills I brought to the table in Germany. And I guess the big one was refusing to do anything
with the ear.
With the ear, which just seemed.
But what did Rick say
afterwards?
Well, you said.
Well, he just said you're a heel. But as the basis of saying I was a heel was that, I could say, hey, just listen to the fans. They're behind this thing. But the main thing was the ratings, because they lived and died on the ratings. I remember going up to the office. May or may not have been the time I brought the exotic dancer up with me to get my check. I can't remember. But it was on the door, it said, welcome to WCW, home of the 3.5. I think it was 3.5 they'd done on a Clash of the Champions ratings. And I think it was also the date that Harley Race brought in the Kongs, and Jesse had a field day talking about their ring attire.
Yeah.
So nobody gave the Kongs the credit. You had that ability to see into the ratings whatever you wanted to see.
Sure.
And a few people had benefited. I think Rick really benefited from a high rating when they featured, they did like a Ric Flair tribute show or something, and while he was with WCW. And after that rating came out, I think Jim Hurd's state of mind was, we need that guy. And Rick wasn't completely happy in WCW, and so within a few weeks or a couple months, Rick was back in WCW. And of course, he's Ric Flair, and he's always going to make an amazing mark on the product. But I think the fuse was lit when they saw the rating he had brought in.
So when Rick is having this meeting with you, at different points, Rick was sort of running creative. Now, of course, he to this day denies that was the case, but he definitely had input.
Yeah.
Did you get the takeaway or the vibe from your meeting with him? This is Rick's idea, or this was something handed down to him, saying, nope, they're not buying him?
I did not know.
Yeah.
I did not know. I can't remember if any plans were revealed to, what Cactus Jack would do as a heel, because I would have loved to have wrestled Rick. I would have worked myself into the best shape I possibly could and done my best to, work up to the standards that Rick had set. But I didn't feel the need for it because I knew that the babyface thing was working.
Yeah.
And once the injury happened, I did work out my time in WCW as a babyface, so there was no turn. But I just thought that was a
missed opportunity.
A missed opportunity for sure.
At that point, I know we're skipping around a little bit, and we'll talk about what happened right here in Huntsville, Alabama one day.
Okay.
But did you and Rick, what did you think Rick thought of your performance and your persona in '94? Did you know that was, because, he wrote in his book that you were a glorified stuntman or whatever he wrote.
Right.
But you didn't have any inclination to think he thought that way in '94, did you?
No. My dealings with Rick, especially when he came back, were largely positive. I'll say this. I think Rick yelled at me twice after matches, and the next day apologized on both those occasions. And he didn't need to do that. That was it was really, big of him, considering where he was in the business and where I was. I'd be lying if I told you I had any idea what Rick thought of me as a performer in '94. I don't really know.
I just know sometimes we fans hear that, guy A doesn't like guy B for whatever reason, and therefore just dismisses him.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a professional rivalry, and sometimes it's just personally they don't like the guy. But you didn't get that vibe at all when you're having this conversation with Rick. It felt like a business decision.
Yeah, I did. I didn't feel like he was screwing me over. I felt like this was the answer they had arrived at, conclusion they'd arrived at, and I just disagreed with it.
In the scheme of things, it doesn't matter, but I am curious, when they didn't go with the guy who spoke German, who did they go for that media? Is it
everybody
Sting
but the guy. And I'm not talking about the main event guys. They use them, but I would say they used half the bus. So if there were 25 guys on the bus, say, they probably used 10 to 12 people who were not crazy about doing
Right.
promotion to begin with. And here I am. I've pitched it to the company, told them I'm working on it. It wasn't like I was working on it from scratch because I had the middle school German in there. I had a little background, but I would add to it. And I worked on it. I mean, worked on it for a few hours every day to the point where I could handle myself with promos, but not just promos, but appearances. So I thought that's really something cool. And later on, when I went to, I think that night that I lost the year, I did cut a promo. And like a lot of things, it wasn't nearly as good after I did it as I thought it was while I was doing it. But I think basically I was saying, Vader, you say to, fight your fight. I say, live my life. Yeah, it's kind of corny now, but I was yelling it out there, and I could sing German folk songs. I just thought they knew, just like they knew it would have gotten over for me to be cutting impassioned promos in the United States after losing my ear, that they just decided not.
There's no plans for you. That's it.
Not to do it. They had to know it would have worked.
Sure.
And I don't think they wanted it to work.
Do you think when we're saying they, sometimes people really think we mean this guy or that guy?
Yeah.
But I've also heard from a lot of folks in WCW that, man, it was just, for lack of a better phrase, just a disorganized mess. Sometimes the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. So I almost wonder, did the person that you communicated, hey, I've learned German, I'd be excited to do some media over there, maybe that never got communicated to the media department within Turner?
You're giving them way too much credit.
Okay.
Right now. Yeah. No, somebody willingly dropped the ball. I think.
see.
Yeah, not mistakenly dropped it.
Do you have any idea who it would have been?
I don't.
Yeah. All right, Mick, it's time. All of our listeners have been wondering when I was going to get you smartened up about this. Are you familiar with Blue Chew?
I've heard of it.
Well, now you're going to learn all about it. This is like a hot tag for your wiener, Mick.
Okay. Are they going to use that in their...
Yeah. Here's the deal, boys and girls. You know all about Blue Chew. Even Mick does. And Mick is a podcast rookie here, right? But you know this episode's sponsored by Blue Chew. You knew that as soon as you clicked play and you saw my name. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, but it's chewable tablets. And Mick, you'll love this, at a fraction of the cost.
Fraction of the cost, really?
Now, I like that. Now, here's the real reason on that, Mick. They are basically offering like almost the generic version. So it's the same stuff if you use Viagra and Cialis, but now it's in chewable form, which means you can take it on an empty stomach. You can take it day or night. You can be ready whenever an opportunity arises, or maybe it's time for that elusive run-in. Oh, right?
Yeah,
Just
that's
boom.
right. The
Good
hot
to go.
tag, come in, a house of fire.
Yeah, working from underneath, going over. I mean, we can get it all in here. The process is simple, guys. You sign up at BlueChew.com. You consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. And here's the best part, Mick. It's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. And I know this is important to you, Mick. Blue Chew's tablets are made right here in the USA. The good old red, white, and Blue Chew. It's prepared and shipped directly to your door, all in a discreet package. But Mr. Foley, there won't be anything discreet about your package with Blue Chew. So, boys and girls, check this out. If you could benefit from extra confidence when it's time to perform, Blue Chew can help. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew for free. Can you beat that price,
You
Mick?
can't beat it, but you got to have the disclaimer about side effects, right? Side effects include smacking the mat,
Yes.
firing up into a fighting position and saying, come on, and rushing your hair. Come on, you son of a... Come on.
And if you're not careful, an accidental eye poke. I mean, you never know. You just never know. Come on, boys and girls. Try this out for free. You can't beat free. All you got to do is use our promo code FOLEY at checkout. Now, you will have to pay $5 shipping, but why would you not do that? Come on now.
Why would you not do it?
It's BlueChew.com. The promo code is Foley. You receive your first month for free. Just visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast and apparently Mrs. Foley's baby boy. I don't know, but you're going home with some today, and I'm going to need to report back.
I am a scientist.
Okay.
I can almost assure you that you were going to become my wife's least favorite person.
Really?
By virtue of giving me
You're going to be pestering her all the time?
Possibly.
Hey, here's what's good about you in particular. You had 3 bites at the apple at the Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if I'm thinking what you're thinking and you're thinking what I'm thinking.
I think I am thinking what I think you think I'm thinking.
We start with Cactus Jack. Maybe we transition to Mankind. We finish with Dude Love, or vice versa. Just switch it up. Just use promo code Foley at BlueChew.com. So, again, the date is March 16th, 1994. We're going to do a whole episode on Vader, I'm sure, sometime. But this is not your first Vader match.
No.
I mean, this is probably match 100 or more. I mean, you had no telling how many matches with him. Did you guys have, like, a standard match? What we've often heard, you know, from other folks who would say, and I think Jim Ross even tells a story on his podcast that he once heard Jack Briscoe and Harley Race talking about a match. Maybe it was Dory and Harley. But as they're getting dressed, they said, you know, something like, should we do Chicago or New Orleans? Because they both knew, all right, this is the type of match we do there.
Yeah.
Did you have a routine like that with Vader?
The routine was Leon beats the hell out of me, and I fight for my life. For real. That's what it felt like. Leon called very realistic match as the heel, and he was free. I wrote this in Leon's book.
Underrated book, by the way. They did a good job.
Yeah, the guy did a good job, and I told him, "Wow, man, you must have really hung in there because Leon, Leon could be a handful.
Grumpy every now and again.
He could be grumpy. Yeah, he could be grumpy." And so I thought the writer did a really good job in working with Leon, and they caught him at that time period where he only had the 2 years to live. And by the time the book came out, Leon wasn't with us anymore. So I wouldn't say that we had a match. There was a pattern to the match, which is he's going to basically, I have to try eventually to knock down this impenetrable wall.
Right.
So I said in the foreword that, man, nobody was a more convincing wall. And you could knock it down piece by piece if you were willing to work for it. And if you weren't, he was going to shut you down and eat you up. So it really forced me, because I'm not a naturally aggressive person, to turn that up a couple notches and fight from underneath. And then when the time was right, Leon would take bumps for me. And I loved working with him. I considered it like my Frazier Ali. Especially when I did not think that I would ever reach heights. You know, I did not think there'd be a WWE run.
You felt this is as good as it gets.
Yeah, and I felt like when I was in my big pay-per-view main event with him in October '93, I could tell by the way the show had been written moving forward that I wasn't part of the mix. So I here's my last hurrah. So when I was in New Orleans doing my show, I talked about how I took, I was near the crowd by the guardrail, and back in the days before cell phone cameras, took somebody's very real camera and used it on Leon. And, when you use something like that up close, you got to bring it. So that thing was in pieces when I handed it back. Probably not the happiest guy in the world. I just ruined his quality camera. But then I wheeled around like this just with my head and scanned the crowd. And as I did that, section by section got on their feet and came alive. And I remember thinking, this is the height of my career, but also the lowest point of my career because I will never reach this height again. That's the way I was thinking in that match. So I never thought that. I always felt in a way like the angle was booked to fail, or at least booked not to succeed, because he was already in the next program with Sid. There was no intangibles out there, but what if they tear the house down? And we had that horrible build, which was the Lost in Cleveland. So they Eric Bischoff mercifully pulled the plug on that like 8 weeks into a 12-week run, and then they just had me come out, and I acted like it had all been a swerve to get inside Leon's head, and we ended up having a great match. That's where I took the bump on his back which was specifically designed to end my career. And I remember being so disappointed that it hadn't. And at the time, my Lloyd's of London was not, it wasn't like a major windfall. It may have seemed like, it would have been like what I made for a year and a half. But I was so frustrated by the whole process that I did want out. I did want out of
What was your backup plan?
I don't know if I had one at that time. You know, we were living pretty frugally. We had a nice little house, but it was, you know, nothing special. I don't know that I had a backup plan, Conrad.
You were just frustrated in that moment.
I was just so frustrated that this business that I had, you know, given so much to, in some ways that had allowed me to live out my dreams, wasn't loving me back like I thought it should.
Do you think being a loner hurt you a little bit? It's the old expression I've heard, you know, business is done in the bar.
Yeah.
He's not a notorious partier. So I'm just wondering, if you were out late night raising hell with the Stan Lanes and the Ric Flairs and all of that, do you think that would have changed anything?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I do know that when I got to WWE, I was relieved to find that you didn't have to be close friends with Mr. McMahon for him to utilize you.
Yeah.
So he was, and also in WCW, there was a feeling that everyone was playing with someone else's money.
Yes.
So when he got to WWE, it was, at least at that time, now I see some things that make me question whether that's still the case. Well, they're a publicly held company also. So
well, but I mean, guys today say, and I think Paul Heyman has done interviews saying, now you play to an audience of one.
Vince.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was not always the case.
But he would see what was working, and point being, you didn't have to be out and about. You know, you didn't have to be close with Vince. I think the first year I was there, hello, Vince. You know, how are you, Mick? I'm doing good, sir. That's what I like to hear. You know, that was it. But that didn't prevent me from main eventing a couple pay-per-views.
The big SummerSlam thing, all that.
Yeah. So I did realize when I was in WCW, I think you're onto something that. There was a correlation between.
Well, let's talk about Vader for a moment, because Vader and I think yourself, you guys had both wrestled in Germany for Otto way back when.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, Leon had been there for the entire length of the tour, which was pretty arduous. Even though you're wrestling in the same place every night for 6 or 7 weeks at a time, you're in a little caravan which is a small trailer home. And Leon was there with his wife and a baby.
Wow.
And I remember I was going a little stir crazy in there to where I actually used my ear to get on an earlier flight. You know, once my match was over, I wanted to get home. I mean, I always wanted to get home. And so I wrapped up my ear. I had the photo when it had just been lost. I tried to get on the plane. They weren't going to let me in. I said, it's a medical emergency. I just lost my ear. And boom, they put me on the plane. And, yeah, I got home.
Wow.
Pretty cool, right?
Yeah, I had never heard that piece of the story. So was there, I'm just wondering, was there a different style match that you guys felt like would connect in Germany compared to American wrestling, since you had both been to Germany before and worked with Otto?
No, here was the issue at hand, was that we wanted to live up to those standards that we had set.
On American pay-per-views.
American pay-per-views and house shows. Yeah. And in particular, I don't want to say in particular, but there's a really cool exception, which was a UK house show. And a guy who had been to either Manchester or Birmingham said, I was sitting there with my friend, and I said, I can't believe they're doing this to each other on a house show. And I said, that is so strange. That's exactly what I was thinking while that match was going on. Like, Leon was trying to break my nose. And I remember, I can't remember if it was who was in charge at that time, but they were on hand and saw it, and they couldn't. It was just a brutally physical match for a house show. It was above and beyond, you know, what anyone should be delivering at an untelevised show, or I would argue on any show. The issue I had with Leon in Germany is that he was hurt. Now, people say Leon may have been a hypochondriac. For anyone who says Leon was a baby, they haven't seen footage of Leon pushing his own eyeball back into his socket.
That's exactly
in Japan.
right.
and continuing to wrestle. I think once you've been through that, then maybe if you've been through that and you want to call Leon a baby, go ahead. Until then, cut him some slack. But he did believe he did believe he was injured that night with his arm, and he didn't think he could wrestle. And I told Leon if he just let me do the hard work, that we could have a pretty good match. And so that included creating the bells and whistles without Leon suffering. And so that's why the hangman was called on that particular night.
So you're putting the match together with Vader. I mean, at this point, you guys have worked together a ton, and I know that a lot of guys are critical of, oh boy, the guys these days, they like to plan everything out. But Macho Man was doing that way back when. Sure. So was DDP. Did you guys have that sort of a formula, or was it just we're going to call it in the ring? We've done it enough.
I think that was the way Leon usually liked it, and that's the way I liked it at the time. I'll tell you that I had 3 matches in the entirety of my career that were planned out from A to Z, and 2 of them were the top 5 matches of my career, and the other one was put together from A to Z by Wing Kanemura in Japan, to the point where he handed me this long soliloquy or whatever, and I looked at it. Even as a guy who likes to have a lot of input in what I do, I looked at it. Looks good to me. And then it was just a matter of trying to remember all those things. So although that wasn't the way I preferred to do it, I had a lot of success when I did do it that way. And honestly, in today's environment with the high def and the cameras right up in your face and having to do complex things, I don't see how you could just call it in the ring. I think that's a bygone era. That's almost like just being able to say the Catholic Mass in Latin. It's like it's an admirable skill, but I don't know how useful it is anymore.
Yeah. So you wrote this in your book. I was probably the sport's foremost practitioner of the move, and I had the scars to prove it. About 50 of them behind both ears. It's funny, as many times as my ears were stitched, as many times as I would watch them turn black to purple to blue to slight shades of green and yellow, I never did have a problem with cauliflower ears the way some guys do.
There you go.
As a matter of fact, unless you look closely behind my ears at the zippers that decorated my auditory landscape, you wouldn't know that I'd been a veteran of so many late-night emergency room visits. I guess the question in all of this, and this is going to come up a lot through our podcast, I'm sure, what's your wife think of this? Every time you come home, you did it again? It feels like she had to be frustrated from time to time, no?
I don't know if I was always informing her about the emergency room visits. She was aware that my ears were taking a beating, and I had an ability to sell that stuff as if it wasn't a big deal. I'm trying to put myself back in her shoes. I remember one time crawling down the hallway to my hotel in Savannah because I had a Falls Count Anywhere match with Sting, I think in 91 or 92, and I was kind of hurting, and so I was like, I'm going to use the ha-ha approach. And as Sting was using the plunge, didn't even occur to me to wash off the plunger in those days because I was hardcore. As Sting was applying...
This is not a new plunger.
It is not a new plunger in the least. This is the Savannah Civic Center plunger. And I could say Sting's got that plunger on my face and the crowd's not reacting. And so whatever jokey stuff I had lined up, because you can have some fun in those hardcore type matches, Falls Count Anywhere, it was like, no, plan B, we're going to go with the physical stuff, the high impact stuff. And I really would pay a price for it on those nights, So I remember I was 26 and I'm crawling to my hotel room. The price was pretty severe. So she knew what she was getting into when she, when we got together. But as I told my children and beyond the mat, like, yeah, just a boo-boo, Daddy's going to be okay. I mean, I convinced an audience, a major part of the North American and worldwide audience, that I thrived on it, or maybe didn't even feel it, right?
Yeah.
And so it wasn't that difficult for my wife. I didn't overplay my injuries when I was home. I don't think I complained about much. My daughter used to see me really hurting, in my later years, and she'd be like, Dad, isn't there something you could take? I was like, oh, I'm going to be okay. Can you get me some ice cream? Like, that was my outlet for the stuff I did. But I was very realistic going into the business, knowing what I wanted to accomplish and knowing what the physical payment was going to be. And I accepted it. I didn't complain about it. And I think my wife felt like I wasn't taking on any more than I could take at that point. And then as I got older in WWE and I couldn't do the things I wanted to do and I started leading with my head more, then that became an issue.
It's just fascinating to think about, when this era is. This is after you've taken the power bomb on the floor from Vader and we did the whole amnesia thing. But this is still almost a year before the King of the Death match, right? Yeah. So...
A year before the King of the... Oh, yeah, okay.
That was 95.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. I was thinking King of the Ring.
Yeah.
It was me and Undertaker. Yeah, it was a year before the King of the Death match.
I'm just wondering, did you have... you sort of laid out once upon a time that you had almost like a wish list or a set of goals, and you were trying to check these boxes. You want to main event a pay-per-view. You want to be in a pay-per-view that gets more than X number of thousand buys and all that. Did you have a set of goals like that at this point in 94?
I don't think I started on the goals until I got to WWE. I think that's when I was doing the reading of the book by an author named Charles J. Givens, who's a financial guy. That's when I really started, really working on saving everything I could, not just in the bank account, but trying to make that money grow a little bit. And he was a big believer in setting goals, and so I started setting goals.
I'm just thinking through, like, you would develop a career around these major moments.
Yeah.
And this is one that's going to happen when there's no cameras rolling, but then the whole deathmatch thing really took over the underground tape trading. I mean, you became, this is before anyone was an internet darling, but you were that in 95. And then you have these crazy over-the-top stunts in the WWF. And this is, if it's not the first one, it's got to be one of the first few. I mean, off the top of my head, the Nestea plunge with Mil Mascaras, and then the whole Vader bump that we've talked about, the power bomb on the floor. Would this be 4 as far as these major moments where you're leaving an impression? And this one wasn't even intended because there's no cameras rolling.
Right. They're lucky that they captured someone captured
a bootlegger,
video, and then WWE, by virtue of owning WCW, established that anyone who had a camera was doing so illegally, and that it was their footage to use. So I'm okay with that. So it was captured by that guy. But this is not a knock on Rick or any willingness for me to open old wounds. And I was glad that on the A&E biography that Rick was the counterpoint guy. As long as you're going to have a counterpoint guy, it might as well be the best guy.
Sure.
But Rick said, it wasn't sold out. You don't need to do that. It's like, if I had been setting my goals and working on my career based on which shows are sold out, then you and I are not having this conversation. Then I never make it to WCW, let alone WWE. And in honesty, not a lot of shows were sold out in WCW. So I would argue,
especially in that era. And
so I would argue that Rick had most of his best matches in front of crowds that were not sold out. The Superdome in Louisiana, I think they had 1,000 people in that huge venue.
Yeah.
And they wrestled like it was sold out. I mean, so I think I don't think that's a valid criticism to say you shouldn't do anything because it's not sold out.
But it is something a lot of people say.
Yeah. Now, if you're saying there's nobody there, like Tracy Smothers said to me in '95 when I had the big barbed wire match, Cactus, there's not too many people there. Promise me you won't do anything crazy. That's one thing to say. There's nobody there. But, to say it's not sold out would be no reason at all, especially when my goal was to have a good match that would live up close to the standards that Leon and I had set, while understanding that I was going to have to do far more of the work that night. So I thought, and it was a move I had done I had done it repeatedly. I'd paid a price for it, and in my own estimation, that was a price I was willing to pay. And then when it turns out, I lost my ear, well, it didn't mean I stopped doing the move, right? I did it another handful of times. Although you could clearly say, if you're going back to the menu, yeah, that's the moment when you take that item off the menu.
Yeah,
and it's still on there. Yeah.
So, Mick, after a big match back in the day, it's been said once upon a time, especially in New York, Vince would take the guys out for a big steak. Maybe once upon a time it was Smith and Walensky, something like that. Everybody loves steak, do they not?
Oh, man. I was at Smith and Walensky's with Al Snow and Kevin Kelly, and Mr. McMahon walked in with a bunch of people, and then word came over that he was picking up our check.
Wow.
I'd never been so embarrassed, because this is Smith and Walensky, one of the top steakhouses in New York City and the country.
Yeah.
And the bill for 3 people was $37. So we were going cheeseburger, water with lemon in it. Yeah, so we were there. I think if you want to enjoy some of the finer things, you need to go with Omaha Steak.
Omaha Steaks is going to get you the same great steak that you've been dreaming of, but boy, it comes right to your house. And here's a little gift-giving wisdom from Omaha Steaks. Dads want steaks. And with Father's Day right around the corner, there isn't a better gift than Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com and type Foley in the search bar and order the Dads Want Steaks package. For just $99, this limited package will include 16 mouth-watering entrees he's guaranteed to love. We're talking smoky, tender-wrap bacon fillets, gourmet jumbo franks, and their air-chilled, boneless chicken breasts. And for a sweet finish, what about those delicious caramel apple tartlets? I'm getting hungry just thinking about it, Mick. And as a special gift for our listeners, when you type Foley, that's Foley in the search bar, and you order the Dads Want Steaks package, you'll also get 8 free Omaha Steaks burgers. These burgers are full of bold, beefy flavor made from 100% Omaha steaks, and now they're bigger than ever at a whopping 6 ounces.
6 ounces?
6 ounces. Come on now.
We're not talking about a quarter pounder. We're talking about a quarter and a half pounder.
This is a lot of poundage here.
A lot.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, don't wait. Send Dad more than a gift. Send him an experience he'll love and can share with you. You see, that's the pro tip right there, Mick. Because if you just get Dad a tie, when are you ever going to get to enjoy that tie? But if you get Dad Omaha Steaks, he's going to grill them. He's going to invite you over. You're eating good, too. It's kind of a gift for both of you.
I have to tell you, as a guy who has been cutting down on the meat consumption, you need to take that steak experience and make it something special.
Yes.
That's why when it comes to red meat, if it's not Whataburger and it's not Omaha, I don't know if I can take part.
I got to recommend it. Go to omahasteaks.com, type Foley in the search bar, and order the Dads Want Steaks package. You'll get 16 entrees and 4 desserts, plus 8 free Omaha Steaks burgers. Omaha Steaks isn't just steak. It's the best steak of your life, guaranteed. That's omahasteaks.com, keyword Foley. I'm curious, just in terms of the timing, there's the old game that we hear about, telephone, telegram, tele-wrestler.
Yeah.
And that summer, we're going to get the big showdown with Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair. Hulk Hogan's coming to WCW. Had you heard Hogan might be coming in? And did you think perhaps that you would be an opponent for him? Because what we had seen in the WWF was Hogan needed a heel factory. Just one big bad guy after another. From Kamala to Big Boss Man to whomever, and it felt like the Cactus Jack persona, if it was a heel, could have been a prime candidate for Hogan.
That's a great point, Conrad. I don't think I ever once thought that way. I think because by the time Hulk came, I had already given my notice.
Right.
In my head, it wasn't a matter. It wasn't a heel versus babyface equation. It was Mick Foley equals no future here.
Yeah.
So when Hulk came in, Kevin Sullivan and I were teaming up. Max Payne and I had a heck of a match with the Nasty Boys.
Unbelievable.
And that was supposed to be my last match before I had that surgery done. And so I actually said something on that. This is where it's a strange thing because you're in the zone because I'm walking from the name of the hotel will come to me in a second. It was just across the parking lot. The Clarion. The Clarion was just across the parking lot from the venue, the Allstate Arena, which is not in downtown Chicago, but it's in a suburb. It was right across the parking lot. I was already on edge because I felt like this thing with me and Vader had been dropped prematurely. My push had been dropped. And so I was not so much confronted, but approached by a camera crew because Missy Hyatt had filed a claim against WCW. Mm-hmm. And I said the immortal words, kind of in character, but I said, if you can reach down into Ted's deep pockets, go ahead and do something to those words. Basically going, hey, go ahead and get some money out of Ted. And I remember the next day, Eric Bischoff calling me up and asking if I'd said that. I said, yeah, I guess I had. So it was a harsh reprimand. And then I think on that same day, Kevin Sullivan called me up. He had heard I was leaving to have my ear fixed, and he said, brother, can you put that off a little while? Evad had been injured. Remember that was Dave Sullivan, who had dyslexia, was a big Hogan fan, was teaming up with Kevin, and he wanted to know if I would take Kevin's place to take on the Nasty Boys. And, okay. And so we ended up being pushed and even winning the WCW tag team titles while I was kind of in the doghouse. So it didn't bury me by any means, not by any means. I mean, WCW, it was always going to be a secondary title, but it was a nice run, and it was with Sullivan. I owed a lot to Sullivan because he'd done for me in 1990. So I had given my notice, but they pushed me. They pushed me, and I think I said at the show that you were at in Huntsville a couple of weeks ago, I was like, they pushed me, but they never once sat me down and asked me to reconsider. Yeah. So if they had ever sat me down and said, hey, look, Hulk's going to need some opponents. We think a heel Cactus Jack would be a great opponent for Hulk. We'd like to keep you on for another year. Then I may have taken that ramp. But no one ever sat me down and asked me to reconsider. And so I was, setting up my, not my debut with ECW. I'd done something in conjunction with ECW as part of WCW.
Including the tag titles, which we'll talk about.
That got me some heat. And that was a good promo, too.
Oh, fantastic.
That was a great promo. So when I got all the heat for spitting on the titles, my question to Rick was, did you see the promo? Did you see the like in context? I'm not burying WCW just because I spit on their title. I specifically mentioned how much I loved that title, how much it meant to me, but that I'd lost even more that night, and the fact that I lost to Sabu, and I'm saying that and putting him over as strongly as I could because I was told how important this alliance was. So I was doing what I thought was best for WCW. And came across like I was burying WCW, which I was not.
I just can't help but wonder, the old hypothetical, what would Cactus Jack and Hulk Hogan look like at, I don't know, say Halloween Havoc 94? That could have been something else.
Yeah, because Hulk and I are both limited physically. Yeah. But as far as getting people involved in his storylines, man, he's got a track record that's pretty much second to none.
It would have been a lot better than the Dungeon of Doom we got.
Is that what they got?
They got the Dungeon of Doom with Earthquake. He thought he was a fish, and yeah, it was a lot of less than stuff.
If we had done the turn and they gave me some mic time, I think it could have been good. I think Hulk and Mick Foley could have been. Now I'm talking about myself in third person. I think Hulk and I could have had a good match in TNA if I hadn't left there. Yeah. Early, and I've when I'm asked about Hulk, I'll say two types of people in the world. The type of person who's going to pretend it's not a big deal to be in the ring with him, and the type of person who's going to acknowledge that it is a big deal to be in the ring with him. And when I saw we had chemistry in the ring, I thought, oh, we could have done a match. Not saying it would have been explosive. Not saying it would have ranked high up there on the 5-star meter.
But in 94.
Yeah, 94. I'm talking about 2010.
Yeah.
But in 94, oh, yeah, we could have burned it down in 94, sure.
Yeah. So, you mentioned earlier that you learned how to speak German. Did you retain any of that? Do you still speak any German?
A little bit, yeah.
Can you give us a "Have a nice day" in German, or a "Bang bang"? Or
bang bang is the same thing. Haben Sie einen netten Tag, or netten Tag. But I can still say Vergessen Sie nicht mein Ohr in der Plastiksuche zu bringen, which means please don't forget to bring my ear in the plastic bag. That's some good English. And I remember the first time we went over there with WWE, Paul Bearer said, Mankind would like to speak a little bit of German. And the Mankind character was really dark at that time, so I went, Mein Hut, hat, Dreiecken. It's a folk song over there. Dreiecken, hat, mein Hut. Real slow, even more deliberate. Und hat nicht Dreiecken. Das ist nicht mein Hut. And at that second, I started dancing. Mein Hut hat Dreiecken hat mein Hut. And everybody started dancing. And this is when Mankind was a heel, right? And then as soon as we finished the song, I said, Ich hasse alles euch, which means I hate all of you. And then I cut them off and made them feel bad for doing it. But it was that idea like, whoa, he's got the German.
He's one of us.
He's one of us. And then boom, cut them off in their own language. So yeah, I did hold on to some of it.
That's tremendous. So as the story goes, Vader was hurt and apparently was asking for the night off. Flair refused. And now you're still going to be a team player and try to work against it?
I don't know if he refused or if we told him we could have the match. I don't want to say Rick said no to a guy said he needed a night off. I know I had a talk with Leon and convinced Leon that we could have a match.
Would you consider yourself Vader's best friend in the company at that point besides Too Cold?
Oh, God, I don't know. Leon was kind of a loner.
Yeah,
Leon,
that's the vibe I got.
And also when things weren't going well for Leon, he could be really cranky. Business is tough enough. Then we all have our burdens to bear. And Leon, again, by virtue of the huge amounts of money he would spend, was not going to be the right traveling partner. But I don't know if I was his best friend in the company. You're saying in WCW or in WWE?
Yeah, just at this point on that night, for instance,
no,
in the locker room, it's you and him and Too Cold.
No, I mean Harley rode with him all those years. Leon and I think, became tighter in WCW. I mean, I earned Leon's respect, and I'd say admiration in some ways. And he spoke really highly of me in his book. But I did not consider myself a close friend at that point. Loved working with him. You said we probably worked 100 times. It was probably a lot less than that, 'cause I don't know if I'd be alive if I worked with him 100 times. Sting probably worked with him 100 times.
Yeah.
I probably worked 30 or 40.
I'm just saying, when you think of Vader in that era, you think of two opponents. You think of you and Sting.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, from your book, Have a Nice Day, this night in Munich would turn out to be even more pain. Too Cold Scorpio, a brilliant high flyer, had wrestled in the evening's first match and had complained that the ropes were too loose. Unbeknownst to me, the German roadies had tightened the cables to the maximum, so there was no give on the ropes at all. And again, we sort of touched on this, but there is a translation issue, and we're not using our normal crew, and we're using a local crew, but it's apparent that no one at ringside ever communicates that note to the back, right?
No. And I only knew that Too Cold wanted them tightened up because you could see on the video that they were tightened up, and that he told me. I think there's an argument can be made that I should have tested the ropes, but I'm specifically not wanting to tip my hat that I have a spot.
Of course.
Now, whether or not people would have deduced that by me hitting the ropes, but I specifically don't do it because I don't want to tip my hat. But unbeknownst to me, the ropes are tighter, cables are tighter than I think they are going to be.
So from your book, with my head caught in the ropes, I could immediately feel the difference. Instead of the normal pain that I had long ago accepted as a consequence for this exciting move, I felt as if my neck was in a vice. I literally felt like I was going to die right there. I'm usually known as a pretty good ring general, and I had kept a calm head in some pretty bizarre conditions, but in this case, I was panicking big time.
Yeah.
I began to do what no tough guy, big cheese, blood and guts wrestler would ever under normal conditions even think of. I began screaming, and I do mean screaming, for help. Vader later took the credit for getting me out, thereby saving my life, but video evidence showed that the big SOB with his back to me was yelling at the crowd, doing his whole "who's the man" gorilla grunting routine. So, chat me up. You find yourself going over the top rope, you've got your head in this vice, Vader's hot dogging, thinking it's just part of the thing. Yeah. What's going on with the referee? Does the referee recognize you're in trouble?
Referee, this is the surreal situation we're in. Referee does not speak English because Nick Patrick had been sent home, and I think Pee Wee had been sent home. One due to a death in the family, one due to a knee injury. I can't remember which one was which. And so they replaced, emergency replacement, French referee speaks no English. So I don't know what I can't remember the referees trying to help us. I do know that when I make my way out of the ring and I get back in, then Leon, seeing that I'm bleeding badly, calls a comeback. To his credit, right? That's a great idea. Bleeding guy, call a comeback. And so I block a punch, I throw a punch, and it's there you can see that thing fall off the side of my head. So it's still connected when I was on the mat, even though the blood was streaming down. And this is something I talked about in my Hall of Fame induction speech. I said, well, I didn't say this part, but I knew from history, as we talked about a little while ago,
doesn't bleed a lot.
Doesn't bleed. So now when this thing is just pitter-pattering on the blue mats, and now my brain goes to that place where I start thinking about how similar Ricky the Dragon Steamboat's entrance music sounds to Listen to the Rhythm of the Falling Rain, because there's that pitter-patter, and one goes, listen to the rhythm of the falling rain, and the other one goes, loves his wife and kids and does the best he can, Ricky Steamboat, which I will argue is the most badass entrance music. With all due respect to The Undertaker, brother, loves his wife and kids. That's what I'm thinking on the ring apron. I roll back in. Leon calls the comeback. Boom, I throw the punch. Off it goes. So now the French referee picks it up. Doesn't know how. I guess he could have showed it to us, but we kept wrestling. I'd love to say we wrestled for another 5 or 6 minutes. It was really like another 80 seconds, which is still commendable.
Yeah.
And by the time the match ends, the referee's already given it to Gary Michael Capetta, the ring announcer. Gary can be seen, and this is where I don't know if he's actually sprinting with it at arm's length. He's definitely moving quickly. And he hands that ear, he hands it to the Nature Boy. He says, I have Mick Foley's ear. I have Cactus Jack's ear. What should I do with it? And it was Rick who said we need to put it in a bag of ice. So I asked Gary after the fact, what did it look like? He said, it looked like a piece of uncooked chicken with tape on it. So in my defense, like, I taped it up every time I was going to do that move, both ears. And I guess I was wrong when I said I never had the stitches in the left ear, because in my book I said I did. Always more severe on the right-hand side, though.
So you go into the match with tape on your ears.
Yeah, I'm taped up behind both ears.
But you don't think that would tip the hand as much as running the ropes?
I had the long hair.
So nobody could see.
Very few people are going to see it. And besides, we're so used to seeing tape on people in a variety of places. I don't think tape on the ear is going to tip it at all. And plus, with the long Foley hair, nobody's going to see it anyway.
Yeah. So this is the same day where Flair says, you're not getting over as a baby face, we need to make you a heel. And then he sees your uncooked chicken with tape on it. It is pretty amazing in hindsight to think that they didn't immediately try to turn that into a magazine article. It should have been on the cover of the magazine.
First of all, WCW gave me the slide. they said we can never print this. And yet, for their one of their pay-per-views where they had the old timers back, Slamboree, almost every visual of those old timers is them bleeding.
Yes.
And that's where I said, okay, so the new blood, no good. If it's 20 years or older, it was vintage blood, that's okay. But they did. They handed it back to me and said, you can do whatever you want with it. We will never print this. And that's like a...
Do you still have it?
Well, yeah, because we used it for...
you should get that framed, hang that on the wall.
Well, here's the thing about that photo is it is in the Have a Nice Day book. When I started doing horror conventions, like in 2003, I would get people buying that photo who were not even wrestling fans just because it was cool. And as, I'm trying to think of the guy's now, Andrew Benarski, who... was Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw remake. He comes looking over at a show called Monster Mania in like 2003. He's looking at the tables. He goes, bro, you know you're the only guy with real blood in his photos. And I went, yeah, I guess I am.
How about that?
Yeah, I guess I am.
It's a cool little footnote.
Yeah, it's a cool little footnote. But it was just an exercise in frustration, the whole thing, from having my, I'm getting my hopes up that they'll utilize the German I've been working on, and that doesn't happen. Then I'm told that the babyface run that I believe is going well, no matter what that rating said. Because, I used to submit things to WCW showing a tail of ratings, because, a pattern is much better than a blip.
Yes.
And I would show, like, for example, during this 6-week run that I had, we did a 6-week angle with me and Dustin Rhodes just on TV. And that when they put us on Sunday night's main event, that during the course of those 6 weeks, the ratings slowly but steadily were ticking up. And I thought that was about as intricate as any of their talent was going to get in pitching why they should... several thousand words would go into these things, but then no one wants to read anything that's several thousand words. So I would stick up for why I thought I deserved, if you came out of your negotiation with the same thing you had, that was a victory.
Right.
Because they were looking to cut money. And like, as I, said a couple weeks ago, the conundrum you were in is you couldn't be a top guy unless you made top guy money. You couldn't make top guy money unless you were a top guy. So even though we talked about the potential for a Cactus Jack Hulk program, probably Hulk was going to be in the...
All right, boys and girls, you know what time it is. It's time for me to tell you about Chili Sleep, and I was just telling Mick about it, and here's the thing about this, Mick. Science tells us the best way to achieve and maintain consistent deep sleep is by lowering our core body temperature. And you've lived in the South, you got to have a ceiling fan in your bedroom. It's like required by law down here.
Yes.
Well, here's the reason. Temperature-controlled sleep is going to repair your muscles after a hard day's work. It's going to improve your cognitive function so you can always start your day feeling sharp and alert. And that's been my experience. I have a Chili Sleep. I've got the Uller system. I've had it for over a year now. It's changed my life. What I've got now is a customizable, climate-controlled sleep solution that improves my entire well-being. Now, they make the Uller. You can also check out the Cube sleep system. Either way, we're talking hydro-powered mattress toppers, right? It's temperature controlled. It fits over your existing mattress to provide you your ideal sleep temperature. Let me explain, Mick. My wife likes to sleep a little warmer.
Right.
So her side, she wants to be at like 75. I like to sleep a little cooler. I want to be at like 67.
Yeah.
I get a perfect night's sleep at that. But before I had Chili Sleep, Mick, I'm cranking down the AC, I'm flipping the pillow. Now I'm paying to heat my laundry room. I don't need my laundry room to be cooler. I need my bed to be cooler. Chili Sleep has made that happen. This is perfect for you to get that deep sleep, whether you sleep hot or cold. Chili Sleep systems are designed to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and give you the confidence and energy to power through your day. Real quick, listen to this now. Imagine waking up and not feeling tired. Chili Sleep can make that happen. They've made it happen for me. Prior to Chili Sleep, Mick, I was sleeping like 5-6 hours a night. With Chili Sleep, I'm 7, 8, 9. I even slept 10 hours once with Chili Sleep. It's unbelievable to wake up and not feel tired.
Sounds incredible, because I'm the same way. My wife likes it hotter. I like it cooler. I lose out.
Of course.
Lose that argument. I'm a guy. It's what we do.
Yep.
And a guy in a successful marriage has to learn to admit he's wrong, even when he knows in his heart he's not. Every once in a while,
correct.
Has to learn to make the thermostat the wife's realm. But now we get our say.
Well, yeah, man. And here's the thing, too. You don't want to wake up all hot and sweaty. You're not going to get a good night's sleep. You're going to get up and pee. You're going to be fighting with the covers. None of that anymore. So head on over to chillisleep.com/Foley to learn more and save 30% off the purchase of any new Cube or Uller sleep system. This offer is available exclusively for Mick Foley listeners and only for a limited time. That's Chili, CHILI, sleep.com/Foley to take advantage of our exclusive discount. Wake up refreshed every day. If you could change one thing about your home, what would it be? A new kitchen, a new master bath, maybe put in a pool? What if you could do it with no money out of pocket and cheaper monthly payments? SaveWithConrad.com can help, and you can even skip your next 2 house payments. NMLS number 65084, equal housing lender, SaveWithConrad.com. So the Observer would have this to say of your incident that night. The pressure of the tightened cables was such that his ear was torn completely off, and his left ear was split badly, needing more than a dozen stitches to close the cut. Ring announcer Gary Capetta took the right ear and iced it. However, doctors were only able to save about 1/3 to half of the lower part of the right ear. Jack actually continued the match for another 2 minutes or so, making a big comeback before doing the planned job, which tickles me, the phrasing, the planned job. Did Vader know that the ear came off, or when did you know? When did he know?
Leon, I don't know if he knew the ear came off. He knew I was injured.
But he saw the blood, yeah.
Yeah, saw the blood. But his ear wasn't off yet. And I don't know if he saw the ear fall. The referee certainly did. But that was like almost in his ring general DNA to take advantage of something like that. Hey, that's going to be a good pop. Set up a little bit of a comeback. And then we went home right after that, you know, 1 minute and 5 seconds later, which was probably about how much time we would have done anyway. And then once Leon got his armpit off me, because he did cover me with his armpit, it wasn't pleasant, especially in the days when everyone wore hot stuff. That was a tough time for your senses. I reached up. Keep in mind, I've had my ear split, you know, at least a dozen times in the past. And I thought, okay, it was bleeding this much. It must be pretty bad. And then I was like, whoa. There was a little wave of panic, but at the same time, there's a rush of adrenaline, which happens. You know, injuries give you a heightened sense of awareness some of the time, and it kicks in that fight or flight reflex. So when I get back to the dressing room, I'm actually like wired. Even in the photo that was taken immediately after, I have a little gleam in my eye. I think the gleam in my eye is there partially because I realize this is a booker's dream.
This is money.
Like, all right, maybe they didn't use the the German, but who is going to ignore this? You can't miss this. And I just thought, me and Leon cutting promos about the loss of an ear.
I took your hearing, now I'm going to take your sight. And blah, blah, blah.
It's going to be big time. And I don't think the powers that be wanted an angle that was big time.
At any point when you're in the back, and I know this sounds silly in hindsight, but does part of you think, can they reconstruct my ear?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was thinking it could be done because in the news at that time was that John Wayne Bobbitt fellow.
Oh, yeah.
Who had a different body part sewn back on. What I didn't realize is that...
Think Vader took that one off too? Or maybe not.
No. There was one time Ron Simmons came darn close to having something like that with the ropes. There was a move in the ropes. I was right there, WCW. I don't think Ron minds me talking about this unique injury. And then when he takes his supporter off, it's like this... It's like this huge slice going around the circumference. And Ron was, I don't want to, I want to avoid sounding like I'm imitating Ron because no one's Ron except Ron. But his big concern was, how am I going to explain this to my wife?
Yeah. Yeah, there's no way to explain that, and it sounds plausible.
So he suffered a severe penile injury, and the only thing he was worried about was how do you explain the unexplainable? Whereas I suffer this severe injury, and I was kind of on I thought they could reconnect it. B, there's part of me that's proud of having finished that match. And see, how in the world are they going to deny this money-making device? I didn't know until 2013, after my Hall of Fame induction speech. I'm glad I went first, because if I'd gone in the middle or at the end, I would have looked out and my family would have been gone, because my son Mickey is on the spectrum. He can't handle crowds that long. So I was very thankful to go on first. I was able to enjoy the rest of the show. And I did not know that Booker and his brother Stevie Ray were on their first tour with WCW. And he said, I walk in and I said, I think I just lost my fucking ear. Bang, bang. And so when I heard that, I was like, well, first of all, that is an appropriate place to drop your rare F-bomb,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And the thing about the bang bang is like, man, I had the commitment, even when injured, to get that catchphrase in front of the boys. And not only did I get it in front of the boys, but later on, 2005. So we're talking in 2000. We're talking 11 years later, 2005. I'm dying to get Adam West to sign a photo. But I've heard that he won't sign things that Burt Ward, Robin, has signed. They're separated, not just different tables, but there's like a wall in between them. And but I saw people coming. I thought, when's the next chance? This guy was super over with with me and my brother, with my older kids, now my younger kids. I'm going to give it a try. And I brought up the book. Somebody had the book, so I could show him that in 1990. Let me get my 90s right. In 96, that my kids went trick-or-treating, and not with the current black backman, but the blue and gray, the way it was meant to be. Adam West, damn it. And that's what I wanted to show him. And when I walk up there, his manager goes, whoa, wait, you sold quite a few of these, didn't you? I said, yeah, it did do well. And now Adam West grabs the book, not paying attention to the part that I had, earmarked with him in it, and he goes, I think I lost my fucking ear. Bang, bang. And he looks at me and goes, you've got a very unique writing style. You capture the listener right away. So who knew in that dressing room in Munich that I would be making an impression on Adam West?
That's awesome.
11 years later, right?
It's too bad you didn't have the bat belt that night. Maybe you could have just sewed it back on. So what happens from there? I just lost my fucking ear, bang, bang. Yeah. Somebody take me to the hospital, right?
Yeah. So I go there accompanied by the ear in the plastic bag with the ice.
Did they have an ambulance there on site?
Yeah. A Krankenwagen. Krank means sick, Krankenwagen. So you go to the Krankenhaus, the sick house, and the Krankenschwester is the nurse, right? Everything based on the keyword krank or sick. And even in the ambulance, all I can think is, imagine the promos. I am that... I know DDP prides himself on the positivity, but I'm a glass half full guy. And all I can think is, imagine the promos. And it dawns on me that this is an injury that it writes itself.
So you get to the hospital, and you're trying to remind them to grab your ear in the plastic bag.
Plastic bag, which they do. And I know I spoke exclusively German to the surgeon. He probably spoke far better English than I spoke German. And they worked on me for like four hours. He explained to me that the ear was too badly damaged to sew back on because it had been pushed off. But what he did at that time, there were two different ways of regenerating or keeping the cartilage vital. One is to grow it on the back of a mouse's back, which some of you may, you can see an ear growing on the back of a mouse. It's crazy looking.
That is.
And the other was to take the cartilage, and he gave me this little pouch up above my ear, and they stored the cartilage up there so that if I ever wanted to go to it, it's still in my head. So arguably, if they took that out, it would still be vital, and a new ear could be constructed. I'm sure all the technology.
That's in your head right now.
Yeah, it's right there. I know this party dying to come over and have a press around. I'll let you do that after we get off the air. But it's pretty cool, and I have spent many a flight playing with it's just my little toy there.
So he tried to attach it for 4 hours before.
Well, he didn't try to. He understood that he could not attach it.
Just based on the visual observation.
So what they did was they took all the rips and the damage, and they made it look much better and salvageable so that I could still hear. So that's why it looks like a small ear, right? There's the left ear here, right ear.
It looks like a small ear.
Looks like a small ear, and that's because of what they were able to do for me that night. I thought they would be able to put it back on. They were not, and then it was the next day or maybe later that night that the Krankenschwester, this is one of those great lines in wrestling, the irony was that the Krankenschwester shows me the ear, and then she steps on the the industrial medical wastebasket. I realized she could throw my ear out. And I said, no, ich möchte mein Ohr zu haben, please, which means I wish to have my ear. So I didn't say keep, which would have been correct. I said, nein, es ist schmutzig, which means it's dirty. And while I stumbled in vain for the German word for formaldehyde, this is before eBay, because you would have that ear on a shelf at the Conrad Museum, right?
Sure,
yeah, who wouldn't want that bad boy? I just pictured myself like holding on to it on the plane, and while I stumbled for that word, she threw it out. And now she probably just went like this, but in my mind, it was like something out of a Scorsese film. And then sinking into the bottom of this industrial medical basket. But this is no exaggeration. She looked at me and said, Der Catch, es ist alles Schauspiel. Ja, Schauspiel means like a big joke or a show or fake. So she was saying that Der Catch, the wrestling, is all fake, yes? And I just looked at the garbage bag can. I thought, if there's one time you should be given the benefit of the doubt on that whole fake real thing, it's when you've just had your ear thrown out in a garbage can in Munich. But
it's amazing to me the person who threw your ear away then wanted to confirm wrestling's fake. Right?
Wanted to confirm it, right?
Is that not a real ear? I mean, my goodness. So you did not keep the ear.
Did not keep the ear, and now. Look, EB is your main man, right?
Yeah.
And I love EB. I've grown to really appreciate EB and understand that if he hadn't given away the results, then I'm in a different place. Especially the way that I was seen within the business,
right?
Within the business when they saw those ratings, whoa! I think we may have underestimated this guy's.
It was no longer an opinion that you were a top guy; it was a fact.
Yeah. Thank you. But I believe Eric may have forgotten to call my wife. He said that he was going to make that call. So when I called the next day and I said, did Eric Bischoff talk to you? And my wife, no, what? I said, well, I've got some good news and some bad news. She said, well, what's the good news? I said, good news is I'll be coming home from this tour a couple days early. She said, what's the bad news? I said, one of my ears is not making the journey with me. And that's when she screamed, no! And the worst part of the stay for me was that I was by myself in a room, which is generally what you want, but I had no reading materials. There's no TV. There's no one coming to visit. It's just whatever those 42 hours I spent by myself. I think someone did come visit with an American novel they gave me a couple days later. But I was looking at like a week-long hospital stay because we needed the antibiotics. And I convinced them that if I could catch a nonstop flight and get to a doctor as soon as I got there, I'd only be missing one antibiotic treatment. And that was the difference between spending 3 days 2.5 days in the hospital and spending a week in the hospital.
So, just to add context to this, Bischoff was there that night?
No. I think I spoke to him on the phone.
Okay.
I think I spoke to him on the phone, and he said he would tell my wife.
You said a moment ago, they were able to make your ear look like a small ear, so there was a little bit of, maybe not plastic surgery, but cosmetic of some sort.
Yeah.
But they saved your hearing. So we didn't talk about that. Could you hear, or was it just muffled because of the blood, or what was happening?
Excuse me?
In that moment, was your hearing lost?
Yeah, no, it was okay.
But they were concerned that it could potentially lead to hearing loss?
I don't think they ever approached me about that.
Okay.
I don't think they ever thought that was an issue.
It never crossed your mind, though. You knew it was, for lack of a better word, a flesh wound.
I was too excited about the promos I could cut.
Okay, I see.
And I remember one time my youngest son, Huey, when he was like 8, he finds the photo, right? And oh, God, there's his dad. Dad, are you okay? I said, yeah. He goes, can you hear? I said, what? He said, can you hear? I said, what? He gets real up close. Like, yeah, buddy, you got to speak up. I've only got one ear. And then I tell him I'm ribbing him. So the ear, that was never an issue. What was an issue was because of the reshaping, is that this ear would get easily infected.
I see.
So if when I went in the Foley pool, it was almost a given that there was going to be a price to pay for that. Whenever I chose to go underwater, this is
even still today.
Yeah, even still today, because it's like it has to go down a. I can't listen to the phone in this ear either, just because of the way the ear is shaped. It doesn't lend itself to a conversation.
You ever try to put an earbud in? An ear, one of those Apple gimmicks?
I may have. I do know that there's that uncomfortable moment when WWE would try to mic me and put the thing on. Like, I remember Renee saying, "Are you going to tell them?" Renee Paquette, and I'd say, "Let him find out himself." So it takes about like 30 seconds for them to realize I don't have an ear. Don't worry about it. But other than that, other than for a while I couldn't wear sunglasses. You were there when I mentioned to nothing but groans that I had to give up my dream of becoming a carpenter. The worst joke. But here's the thing. It never gets over, which is why I love it.
You did it on ACW TV, something like that.
Did I really?
I thought you did something with a pencil.
It's such a groaner, but for people who do get it, they get a kick out of it. But it's never like it gets a lot of laughs. It gets 1 or 2 laughs. And then even after I fill people in on the punchline, it's still not that funny. But I love saying it. Because, I love that.
You need that in your show.
Yeah, you need to have one groaner, yeah.
Not every match is a 5-star.
That's right,
Not every joke is.
There you go.
There you go. So, the Observer would write this. He returned to the U.S. from Germany on Friday or Saturday and is receiving daily in-home treatment from a nurse. There's no definite prognosis on when he'll be able to return to wrestling, although he is said to be hopeful of returning for the April 17th Spring Stampede pay-per-view in Chicago. Almost shockingly, in the poorest taste possible, WCW in its company newsletter made a joke of the injury, calling him Vincent Van Jack, saying Jack did his best Vincent Van Gogh imitation, and said how after the match, Cactus grabbed a photographer to make sure it would capture this Kodak moment on film forever, and said that Jack was being sent home from the tour eerily, and closed with, if Cactus Jack hit the ropes differently, we could be making comparisons to John Wayne Bobbitt rather than Van Gogh, and they even had a photo caption saying that Cactus friends can cross earmuffs from their Christmas list wish for him this year. So WCW did something with it, but not very much. Not very much.
No, not very much.
What's the talk in the business? Like, what are the guys saying? I'm just curious, because this is something that, as far as I know, has never happened in wrestling before.
It did happen to Killer Kowalski.
Oh, yeah, the Kowalski story.
Yeah, I got his name when he gave the knee to Yukon Eric. Eric had the heavily cauliflowered ear. And that's the same, kind of the same way. Not a flying knee, but Leslie Smith, the UFC fighter, almost lost her ear that same way, but it was a punch that kind of knocked that whole cauliflower section off, and she was able to get that repaired. And she and I formed quite a friendship, long-term friendship over that similarity we have. But the Talkin' Wrestling, I received a really nice card signed by a bunch of WWE guys.
Wow.
Some of whom I had never met. And I remember specifically like, wow, Bret Hart signed this card. That was really cool.
That is cool.
I think a fan, I don't know if WWE did it of their own volition or if a fan got it signed at an event, but it was signed by so many people it seems like it would have had to have been backstage. And I thought that was nice. I thought it was nice that the guys in the WCW bus were singing "Stuck in the Middle with You."
Reservoir Dogs.
Reservoir Dogs, right? Is it Michael Madsen? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the actor who did so well into the "Stuck in the Middle with You" Steelers wheel tune.
They did that night on the bus or the next
They were
tour?
singing it. Yeah, I guess they were singing it throughout the rest of the tour.
Yeah.
Showing their sorrow.
Wrestling fans, it's time to win with ZYN. Get to WrestlingPrizes.com to register for your chance to win one of 4 once-in-a-lifetime digital Q&A sessions with wrestling legends Ric Flair, Eric Bischoff, Jim Ross, or Mick Foley. Winners also get an autographed replica championship belt and a prize pack from ZYN, America's #1 nicotine pouch. Register once per day, now through July 15th. WrestlingPrizes.com. No purchase necessary to enter or win. Open to U.S. residents 21 and over. Void where prohibited. For official rules, visit WrestlingPrizes.com. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Psst. Who's going to take care of your family if something happens to you? What would they do without your income? If you don't have a plan, you need to go to GoliathLife.com. Get a quick quote for more than 20 carriers. You don't even have to leave the house. If you need a medical exam, they'll send somebody to your house or office. You're in total control. You pick the rates, you pick the payments, you pick the terms. You're in total control, but it gives you and your family peace of mind. What if something happens to your income? Hurry to GoliathLife.com. So, as far as Vader goes, you're pretty panicked when this thing is happening, and he's clearly oblivious to what's happening.
Yeah.
Any hurt feelings on your side about that, or did you recognize he didn't know?
He didn't know. And then when he did realize I was hurt, he called a comeback, which was a cool thing to do.
Yeah.
No bad feelings at all about that.
When did you...
Especially because for 2 years, he led me believe he'd saved my life by getting me out of there.
Right.
So I didn't have any hard feelings. I thought he'd saved my life. I think I was thanking him up and down.
So, I'm curious, they say that got to get back on the horse again. How long is it before you do that spot again?
Whew.
And is the thinking when you decide to do it again, well, shit, how much worse can it be?
You know what? I don't believe I did it in WCW again. So that was March, right? March 16th.
Yep.
I think the next time I did it was that I know of was December in ECW with Terry Funk.
Okay.
And that's the one where it's a combination Hangman Hardway. So that when I get out, I not only, have pried my way out of those ropes, but I get the big split over my eyebrow, courtesy of the Terry Funk left hand. I don't know for a fact that I did it before then, but I might have. I'm trying to think if I might have done it in... no, because I didn't start my Japanese tours till January 95. So I think probably the first time I did it after the injury was 6, 7 months later, 8 months later.
That just feels like to me a time when Mrs. Foley says, okay, Mick, we're going to pinky promise. You're not doing that spot anymore. But she didn't do that.
I don't think so.
So, knowing the way I think I do now, I mean, you have to think this is going to be the catalyst for a monster push. And if WCW is not going to do something with it, you at least think, I'm going to do something with it. We saw those series of ECW promos, but do you think you ever really got the proper mileage of it, or is that one of those timing is everything?
No, timing was everything. There was some thought of having Leon and I revisit that in WWE, especially when we were a tag team. That was going to be maybe what led to the falling out. I was revisiting that moment, but the time was really of the essence. And I didn't think it could be capitalized on in ECW or in Japan. I just wanted to get out of that really smothering environment. And also, Ole was back. Rick had the talk with me about becoming a baby face, and it just clearly they were not looking at me as being a high priority. And again, I may have seemed like a dreamer at the time, but the dreaming paid off because there were better things in store for me down the road.
Would your career have changed any had this not happened? I mean, do you think you still would have put a notice in?
No, I think I would have, as a guy with 2 kids. I may have eventually put the notice in,
but not then.
But I was okay. I mean, I like I said, I was working with Max as a tag team, and we were having good matches. We had that real good match with the Nasties, and then Kevin and I were a pretty good tag team. And it was just $3,000 a week would have been hard to turn down when there's no other option. But having been given this great gift from the wrestling gods and had it sent back, that was enough for me to want to look elsewhere. And
we know you do, and boy, it's a long story from there. Next week we'll continue the story, talking about your first WrestleMania. You're going to get paired up with the same guy who ripped your ear off here and challenged for the tag titles against Owen and Davey Boy. And then we're essentially laying some groundwork for what's going to be the biggest breakout year of your career, 1997. But that was his Mankind, and the rumor and innuendo is we've got a cameo today with someone who wants to hear from another persona.
Oh, that's right, but I don't have my, I'd have to get my bag.
So here we are. It's cameo time. We're going to end every Foley is Pod this way, and you can book one right now at cameo.com/Mick Foley, but it's definitely not a plug.
It's not. It's
informational. We're just
informational. Sharing. It's like almost like a gift we're giving you.
It is.
Speaking of gifts, I don't know if we want to be those guys getting controversial for the sake of getting controversial, but should we explore this subject that you and I just touched on lightly?
I mean, I'm for it. Do you want to do that before or after the cameo?
Whenever you like.
Let's close with it.
Let's close with it. Okay.
Instead, let's keep things all smiles.
All right, keep it all smiles.
And then we'll send them home with a controversy.
Brother, we're going to send you home with something to talk about.
This is going to be trending when we're done. Just like this cameo might be. It's cameo.com/Mick Foley. What do we got today, man?
We go Ruthless Rob. And shout out is Cactus Sack for Big Money Hustlers, JCW, Juggalo Championship Wrestling, and Stranglemania legend Cactus Sack here with a shout out to Ruthless Rob. Okay, and he is Hardcore Lion here with a shout out to all right. It's a pretty simple request, so I'm going to do it. Ready?
We're ready.
All right. Hello, Ruthless Rob. This is the hardcore legend Mick Foley with a shout out from the guy who played Cactus Sack in Big Money Hustlers. I know you are a big time Juggalo Championship Wrestling fan and a Stranglemania fan, and you love the legend of Cactus Sack. But unfortunately, I can't just change into characters. It's not like I possess any magic powers that allow me to just kind of transform. It's not like I can just tap my heels together 3 times and say, there's no place like home, there's no place like home, there's no place like... Oh my God, I feel something happening here. It's like a complete transformation is taking place. I don't know what it is. Bang, bang! This is Cactus Sack. I wanted to tell you, despite the fact you can't see my blood... Son of a gun! Where is the bandage?
It fell off behind you.
Fell off behind me.
We're gonna make this the highlight reel.
Where'd it go?
We have to keep Dave Silva in the frame, picking up the bloody.
I knew this wig is a little nicer than when I usually. I got to get this thing tied on really good. Oh, what an embarrassment that was!
A peek behind the curtain here, folks.
This is really a peek behind the curtain. I'm usually a one-take guy.
But the point is, you're not phoning it in.
I'm not phoning it. Technically, I'm using my phone to phone it in.
I guess literally you are, but you know what we mean. Yeah, figuratively.
Okay, let's try this again. Where's my noisemaker there?
It's underneath the chair.
It's under my chair. This is the best $12.99 I ever spent on Amazon for the magic wand.
Between that and you ordering a Mankind mask from Amazon, you might be their biggest ambassador.
Now I go to Etsy and buy them from Bangkok.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. All right, ready? Ruthless Rob, this is the hardcore legend, Mick Foley. Take 2. We just did this amazing video for you. And then it had a wardrobe malfunction. Janet Jackson-esque type of that level of wardrobe malfunction. Ruthless Rob, this is the hardcore legend, Mick Foley. And I understand you are a big-time JCW fan, a Stranglemania fan, and that you're actually looking for the legendary Cactus Sack, who starred in Big Money Hustlers. Ruthless Rob, I'm sorry, but I don't want to disappoint. We try our best to exceed your expectations, but in this case, it's going to be a little bit of a disappointment because unfortunately I don't have any means to just transform into characters I portrayed 25 years ago. It's not like I have some type of magic wand that just allows me to change. What the heck is going on here? Ruthless Rob, I don't know what's going on, but it's almost like something's overtaking me. Please tell me this. It's good enough. This is Cactus Sack. Been growing my hair out for a while. I wanted to say to you, thank you for being a big fan. And bang, 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 bang. Whoa, we just saw the return of Cactus Sack in a major, major way. Thank you so much, Ruthless Rob, for being a big fan. Ruthless Rob, also known as Maggot Mouth. Bang, bang. Yes. Whoop, whoop. It's Cactus Jack, the hardcore legend, and Mick Foley, the original face of Foley, saying thank you for being a fan. Keep on watching Stranglemania, and may all your days be nice. Yeah.
There it is.
There we go.
Cameo.com/Mick Foley. Just making dreams come true every which way, buddy.
Now, mental note, never use this wig again unless I start the video. This one's not as good for a quick change of pace. We better cover up this failure by ushering into the wrestling
controversy.
The controversy, yeah.
I can't believe the internet hasn't been talking about this. We're going to maybe break the internet with this.
I think we're breaking the story and the internet, and possibly my friendship with John Cena.
Oh, well. You know, when was the last time he saw you? Because I hear you can't even see him.
Can't see him, yeah.
So, you pointed something out to me. You mentioned it yesterday, but I didn't really pick up what you were talking about. And then today at lunch, we had a chance to compare notes. And I'm with you. I'm signed on to your conspiracy here.
I laid out the evidence, but didn't tell you what it was you were looking for.
No.
And then
out of context, I didn't get it. But once you pointed it out, boy, it's obvious that he's trying to pull a fast one over.
Somebody's trying to pull a fast one on a lot of us.
I blame Cena.
Now, giving Cena probably was. We'll let people judge for themselves. Giving him his props. I loved the movie Vacation Friends.
Everybody does. Great
what
job.
A great movie. I didn't realize it came out a year and a half ago, I think, but it's a great movie. Cena's really come into his own as an actor. I think all those years around all those wacky characters allow him to portray wacky characters. He's done 4 or 5 really good ones. He can play the straight man. He's a really, really good actor.
And Peacemaker was a huge hit.
Yeah. I've got to watch that. It's next on my list. But, all right, I've got the nice stuff out of the way.
Yes.
Can we put that visual up there so people can see?
Absolutely.
All right, let's put it up there. And it looks good. There's John Cena. He's obviously got some product in his hair. But let me tell you something, brother. I know John Cena. John Cena is a friend of mine. John Cena has a forearm that I referred to in my Santa memoir as one that Popeye the Sailor Man would be obvious of. Would be jealous of. Envious, not obvious of. But it's obvious to me that's not John Cena's forearm in the movie poster.
It's not.
That's a normal person's forearm.
It is.
And John Cena does not have a normal forearm. Can we throw up a photo of John Cena with those massive forearms?
If the forearm don't fit, you must have quit.
You must have quit.
And I'll tell you this. We've learned today, you do all of your own stunts.
I do.
That's a stunt forearm.
That's a stunt. Cena didn't have the guts, the stamina,
The intestinal fortitude
to step in there and do that photo shoot on his own. He was. I think it might sound slanderous. I think that there was some photoshopping going on.
Wow.
I'm not even sure all those 4 people were in the same room at the same time. And they just thought they're going to drape a normal forearm and they're going to get that past me? No, not on my watch. Not in Mick Foley's America. So, John Cena, you have some splaining to do.
Well, and I'll tell you this. You know, you were known for your forearms in wrestling.
Yeah.
But I think we can all agree that we're looking at a fake forearm.
That's the difference. You're talking about a guy who prided himself on real forearms.
That's right.
Discovering the fake forearm of one of his contemporaries.
Mick Foley doesn't do blood capsules. No. And he doesn't do fake forearms either, by God.
Right. And
real forearms.
We've seen a fake forearm in our midst, and it's time we report on it, get to the bottom of it, expose those who are responsible, and if it costs me my friendship with John Cena,
it's worth it.
So be it.
Just for funsies, let's see the Foley forearm, and then we'll have Silva Photoshop it into the movie poster. So if he's going to use a fake forearm,
might as well be mine, right?
You're available for forearm work.
And it's a hairy forearm,
right?
Just like that one was, right? Look at that. Oh, man, it's shaking because I'm doing the DDP dynamic tension thing. Most exercise I've had in about whew, that was painful.
So before we leave, I think we should probably tell about our fun little situation that happened at lunch today that apparently happens to you all the time.
Yeah.
But the comedic timing you had on the exit was really, really well done.
So do you want to set the stage or should I?
So Mick has been staying in town here near our favorite Mexican restaurant. So we decided we were going to have that for lunch today. So I meet him over and grab our table ahead of time. And Mick comes in and he's barely at the seat 5 minutes. And the host, who was at the front desk, came over and said, "Has anyone ever told you that you look just like Mankind?"
Yeah.
And while Mick is wearing a Cactus Jack Mankind shirt, he says, "I get that all the time."
So I'm not lying.
No.
My kid, like Huey, my youngest, you said, "Dad, why do you lie?" I said, "I'm not lying. I'm answering that question. And if he follows up and says, 'Are you him?' I will say, 'Yes, I am.' But until they do that, I will just acknowledge that they are right. Yes."
And then upon our exit, we have to walk right past that host stand, and there he stands. Mick takes one step out of the restaurant and then back in and goes, "Have a nice day," which is just the most Mick Foley thing ever. This has been a lot of fun, man. I don't know what I expected when we started doing these pods, but this has been a fun.
Can I add one more story to that?
Please do.
Okay. So you've seen how it usually goes. "Excuse me, are you?"
Yes.
Anyone ever told you that? "Excuse me, but are you?" So 2 years ago, I'm at a Brooklyn Nets game with my son Huey. And the Nets, I only ask once or twice a year. They set us up, really good seats. We're second row underneath the basket. And Huey and I are sitting there, and this businessman, you know the look. When a successful guy, his kids aren't lacking for anything. And as soon as they get there, one of the kids points to Dad, points to me, and I see a lot of whispering going on. Huey goes, "Dad, you've been recognized." "Yeah, I know. It's part of what you do. You might as well enjoy it, right?"
Yes.
You're under the basket. There's still 30 minutes left to go. And so when the guy comes over, he says, "Excuse me, I hate to interrupt you. I know you're their family." So he's ticked off all the right boxes.
Yes.
"I know you must get this a lot, but are you Robin Lopez's father?" Because Robin Lopez is a 7-foot basketball player with the wild hair. This is before I cut the hair real short. And I just burst out laughing. That's the last thing in the world.
No.
Robin Lopez and his brother Brooke are 7-foot basketball players. I said, no, I'm not. He goes, "You never get that?" I said, "It's actually the first time I've gotten that." And then later on, I told him I was, because I'm now texting about it. So I say, so Huey sees me when I I tag in Chicago Bulls, NBA. Nobody's going to care about that. And I end up doing a shot when Robin Lopez is taking a photo, taking a foul shot, and I say, "You can do it, son." And so after the game, now we see that the Bulls have commented, the NBA has commented, and about an hour and a half after the game, Robin Lopez says, "For 10 years, I've been leaving these tickets, and you finally made it. I love you, Dad."
Oh my God, how great is that?
All starting out with that classic, the one we've all heard, "Excuse me, I know you're with your family. I hate to do this. I know you get this a lot, but are you Robin Lopez's father?"
Sounds like a fun shirt, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Mick, this has been fun, man. We've had 3 days recording here back to back to back, the first 3 episodes of Foley's Pod. 3 episodes in, what do you think?
I'm thinking it's good. I'm thinking as we're doing it that it's the type of show people will want to listen to.
I agree.
And I thank people who are listening. I know there are a lot of choices out there. You can't listen to them all. I don't know if there's enough hours in a day to listen to every wrestling podcast.
There's not.
So you have to make choices, and if you've chosen to spend some time with me and Conrad, I appreciate it.
Thank you guys very much. Tell your friends, hit the subscribe button, follow us on social. We're at Foley is Pod everywhere, and we'll be back in your phone next week talking WrestleMania 13.
I like it. See you then.